Alright, Battletech fans, here we are with round number 2 of our little experiment. Now, some of the commenters in the last video didn't seem to understand exactly what an experiment was, so being the helpful individual I am, I thought I'd help you out. See, an experiment is a hypothesis, a procedure that tests the hypothesis, and then the results of the procedure either confirming or refuting the hypothesis. So, if you never read a Houghton Mifflin textbook in 3rd grade or ever had to do one of those little science fairs down in the assembly hall, there's your Cliff's Notes. What are we doing today? Well, as I said last time, today we are testing a high-content isopropyl alcohol. I believe this is like 98% or 95%. It's pretty high. Then we have Mean Green, super strength. I've heard this stuff is good for 2 things, degreasing engines and pulling up blacktops. So we're going to see what it does to that Thunderbolt. And then finally here we got Purple Power, just like I said. And I got that inside this little can here that I've cut. This is my trusty stripper cup right here. If you don't have one of those, just go down to any convenience store and grab yourself a soda, cut off the bottom of it when you're finished, and there you go. I think it's like polyethylene or something. They put acetone in those things, it won't eat through it. And then we have our ISO. Now, my hypothesis here is that this blue Vindy is going to get eaten alive by that alcohol. So I've got that Orion sitting there. We're going to strip that because it's metal, so we can hang it. Then I got another Thunderbolt here that's got a bunch of grime on it that needs to come off. I've got this door that LA's Totally Awesome couldn't take care of all of it, so we're going to throw it in, looks like maybe the Purple Power. And then we got this Cicada here, one of my test models. So let's dump them in. That can go, and then that's going to get dead. And we'll take the door. Can it fit? Yeah, it can fit. Alright, and part 2 of this process is giving the Simple Green a second chance, as I was told that the Simple Green out of the spray bottle there on the left is not exactly the best. It's diluted, so it really won't work as well, but if I just got the undiluted stuff, I would have a much better time of it. And as you know, here at Battlebound, we spare no expense. We are giving it the undiluted Simple Green treatment. So my hypothesis here is that the Mean Green will have a similar effect to the spray bottle version of Simple Green, in that it won't have too much of an effect because it comes from a spray bottle and therefore may be diluted, so we'll see. The Purple Power, however, I have great faith in. My hypothesis there is that those will come out easy peasy. We shall see. The Simple Green, howsoever, I'm going to say I think it's going to turn out the same way that it did with the spray bottle, and it's going to be one of those things that you would just need to leave in there for a much longer time period than the average person wants to let something soak in order to get it clean. I think that the Vindy here in the ISO alcohol will be toast, but that the Orion will come through just fine and be easy to strip. I've given everything about a day and a half this time-ish, because I wanted to give everything an equal amount of time as opposed to just trying to figure out which thing would work the fastest. I figured about a day and a half, just a little under 48 hours. That's a reasonable amount of time that anyone would be willing to spend stripping a miniature if you wanted to get back to painting it as fast as you can. So the isopropyl alcohol has burned off just a little bit because I left the cap off it for a while. But once I noticed that was happening, I put the cap back on and turned it upside down. So as you can see, the Orion here, that's definitely ready for the brush. But look at that Vindy! Some paint's coming off. Let's check. Let's see. No, it's still strong. Doesn't appear to be ruined at all. And paint is even just rubbing off on my fingers as I do this. So that is absolutely ready for the brush. That's a pleasant surprise. Let's look at this Thunderbolt here. Oh, that is very, very promising. Look at that paint curdle. Yeah, that's definitely ready for the brush. I have a feeling this is going to go fairly easily for the Mean Green. The perp! The perpetrator. Cicada. Doesn't seem to... Oh, I see a little bit of paint curdle there on the... You can kind of see the grain of it on the whites. We'll see what happens. And now, the big test. Has the simple green done anything differently than it did the last time? Let's find out. Oh, that's very promising. Look at the curdling paint. This may just be ready. Oh man, that is good looking. Okay, the salamander is ready for the brush. So it turns out my hypothesis was incorrect on the Vindicator. It lived, and we shall see how my hypothesis is for the Purple Power, Mean Green, and Simple Green. Let's get the brush out. Well, it just goes to show you what I know. So the Vindicator not only survived, but all the paint came off of that, and I suspect heavily that's because there was no primer underneath it, because I used that mainly as a test model. Now, if you look at the Orion here, all the top coat, everything that was over top of that primer came off, but man, I scrubbed and just could not get that primer to come off. The glue, however, dissolved. So it looks like, insofar as my hypotheses go, I'm 0 for 1. So let's see how the other ones are doing. And a little more for the shows you what I know pile. The Simple Green has performed excellently in a side-by-side test against Mean Green with very similar controls. You see, I didn't realize that either of these miniatures didn't have any primer on them when I dunked them, so that's actually a good thing. Both of these agents will strip paint right off of that miniature, and it's not going to harm anything. It took less than 3 minutes. In the case of the Thunderbolt, less than 2 to get everything to come off. So I'm real curious now what that Simple Green concentrated formula will do on a miniature that has primer on it. Oh, look. I just so happen to have a miniature with some primer on it. Let's drop it in there. And there's no stripping video for this one because it took me less than a minute to realize that this was going to be a lot more work than what I wanted to put into it. Now you can see kind of here where I've scraped off some of the paint with my fingernail, but that's the kind of pressure it took, and some of that paint is still on there. Now there's no primer on this, it's all just paint. So if I had thrown it in the Simple Green or in the Mean Green, I imagine that it all would have come off, but I guess I'm 0 for 3 on my hypotheses here because the Purple Power, the Perpetrator, seemed to work the least effectively out of all of the ones I've tested. And we've got ourselves a miniature with primer to test in the Mean Green or the Simple Green. Which one do you think it should go in, Will? Mean Green or Simple Green?
Let's try the Simple Green.
Simple Green. It's going to need just a little bit more courage there. Not a problem. Filled to the brim, baby. Overflowing. What can you do? And because we spare no expense here on the show, I thought I would give the Mean Green a fair shake against the Simple Green and give it a miniature that has primer on it as well, because I hate the metal pouncer. So into the dip you go. Alright, and here we have our final results of the concentrated Simple Green. Now, the Gladiator here, I'd say a good 85% of that primer came off. Only really in the recesses can you still see it. There's a little bit of green here where I couldn't get my brush. But all in all, this is something I would be satisfied with. I would be fine repainting that as is. And then we have the Orion, which, though broken, stands as a testament to the efficacy of the Simple Green. We have a similar situation here where we got most of it, not every single last bit of it, but I would definitely say that's enough to be able to go back and try again and not have that cause too much of a problem. Now let's move over to the Mean Green. Look at this pouncer. Darn near clean as a whistle. It didn't really do much, well, it did a lot to that base. Got most of it. And I didn't scrub this thing as much as I could. I just noticed that I could get almost all the primer off of that upper torso, and that was about as much as I really ever wanted to look at that pouncer ever again. So I decided I wanted to do one more test to see what the Mean Green could really do. I knew that primer was going to be an issue for Simple Green, so even though I'm far more satisfied with it the second go-around than I was the first, I don't know. Something in my gut told me Mean Green had more to say before it was time to wrap this all up. After I painted several miniatures using the Battletech beginner paint set from Army Painter, using both brush-on and spray primer, I waited overnight for them to set before I threw them all in a completely fresh batch of mean green the next day. After another day and a half or so to soak, I came back when I noticed the liquid in the jar had turned beet red. I even painted one of the miniatures with a standard war paint as the base coat, with a speed paint over top and automotive spray primer underneath it all. Stripping the Vindicator with the mean green was like scraping melted butter off the end of a serving knife. The paint curdled and came off with next to no effort. The bases were another story, but they came out of the bath without any paint on them, so all in all, that's good enough for me where those are concerned. Even the vast majority of recesses in between panels got clean, and to me, that's impressive. I'm used to the results you saw with the Gladiator, just accepting that I won't get much better than that and hoping it won't be noticeable when I paint over it a second time and being forced to move on. So saying I was pleasantly surprised to be wrong about the mean green is a total understatement. For the price, I really can't see myself getting anything else in the near future. Alright folks, the results are in. Your winner of the Great American Strip-Off Round 2 via split decision, Mean Green! No, but in all seriousness, look at this. Look how these miniatures just have so little paint left in the crevices. So little primer. I mean, that Wolfhound has a little bit more ways to go, but I didn't really scrub that as hard as I scrubbed all the rest of them. I am very impressed overall with this mean green. Definitely did a lot better of a job on these, both spray primer and brush-on primer, than the Gladiator that came out of that simple green. Now, I will say this though. I am glad that I got the simple green because the undiluted formula is definitely a lot more effective than what you're going to get out of a spray bottle. But even though the cost is pretty decent, I think it's like $11 and change for that kind of volume, therein lies my problem is that kind of volume. Like, I mean, how many miniatures are you going to need to strip? I mean, you doing a regiment? Okay, well, cut the top off. Just dump them all in. You'll be good to go. Maybe that's the way you want to go. But if you're only going to strip a company of minis or less, or just the odd miniature here and there that didn't go your way, Mean Green has got to be, just pound for pound, mech for mech, the best bang for your buck. Having taken on some of the toughest competitors you'll find this side of the inner sphere. And folks, if you've got any other cleaning solutions you'd like to see us test here on the show, leave them in the comments below and we'll get right on that science experiment. Otherwise, if you like what you've seen so far, do us a big favor and subscribe. Turn on all notifications so you can find out exactly where Battlebound is going to turn up next. And remember folks, Battlebound has a Patreon at patreon.com/Battlebound. Sign up today to enjoy those benefits tomorrow. I'm Tuck Davian, and I'm sure looking forward to seeing you next time right here out on the Space Lanes.
Be sure to smash our like button and subscribe to our channel.
Crowdfunding is when lots of people give you small amounts of money to help your passion project come to life.